Welcome to Just an Average Citizen, the podcast that helps to educate, inform, and empower you to make an impact in Abilene and the Big Country. Welcome back to our podcast, or my podcast today. I'm so excited you decided to join me. I'm always excited when you choose to join me because I know it means you're taking intentional steps toward improving your understanding and awareness of what's going on in the city and even the Big Country, because while Abilene is a big part of the Big Country, there are about 25,000 people who do not live in the city limits. And so we have to know better how to take care of the county parts by understanding what happens in the city, because the county is run by the state, and that can be a little bit more intimidating, surprisingly. But it's so helpful for you to subscribe and share this with your family and friends so that they too can know what's going on in Abilene and the Big Country, and that helps get the word out, because it's just going to take little bit by little bit, word of mouth by word of mouth, for people to start understanding there is a way to understand what's going on in the city. And some days I feel like I'm flying blind and I don't know what I'm doing, but then there are other days where I can see that I'm starting to make progress in understanding where the pressure points are and how we can get people to respond to the needs and requests that we have in a timely and efficient manner. So I'm going to keep this one pretty short and sweet and get you a fair or better understanding of what's going on so that you can know how to pay attention better. Because again, if I'm the only source of information you have, that's great for a season, but at some point you're going to have to learn how to figure this out yourself, because we've got to all do our part to understand what passions and pursuits interest us. And sometimes you may have things you want to pursue within what goes on in our city than I do. And it takes a village, as they say, to really understand what's going on in our city. So let's get started. We're going to look a little bit on the website. You know, one of the things I think it's important for you to understand is this website is got a lot of information. You just have to know how to navigate it. One of the things I think you should understand is that in government, there is what's called agenda and minutes. And so if you just want to kind of know what's going on in the next few days or the upcoming meetings, they have meetings for about a week, I would say. So like, for example, the Board of Adjustment meeting was on Tuesday. Then there was another meeting on Tuesday for the Citizens Advisory Board for People with Disabilities. Then Wednesday, there was an Airport Development Board meeting. And then, of course, the council meeting. What you need to understand is every board has an agenda. And so this is the Airport Development Board. So they basically review all these items each time they have a meeting. And then you can scroll down and see if they have an executive session. The problem is most of these meetings, let's see if I can scroll up here a little bit, they have an agenda packet. But as you can see, the agenda is 3 pages and the agenda packet is 3 pages. So that means they don't include minutes. They don't include anything in the agenda to help you understand or be prepared for information that's being discussed. And why that's helpful is because you want to know things that are going on so that you can respond accordingly to them. Or, you can't go to every meeting. So say you find out that your neighborhood is getting a zoning change and you want to know what's going on. So it's important, to check the agenda of the city council meeting to see what's on the docket for the discussion. This has 5 minutes or 5 pages on it. But the problem too is that it doesn't really tell you much. It says they're going to, for example, the resolution, they are awarding a bid for a street resurfacing project work zone, S10A, west of Rose Park neighborhood to Bonke. Okay, and that's all it tells you. So you don't really understand. Maybe you don't know where S10A is. Maybe you don't know where west of Rose Park is. And that's where it's really helpful to come in and pick, I did the wrong one, and go to the agenda packet. Now, the problem is the agenda packet can be very long. It's minimum of about 200 pages, and this one was an extremely large one. It was, I believe, 491 pages. So then what's important, and I'm going to give you just a quick highlight because I'm so thankful that Councilman Reagan is using his social media platform to start encouraging people to understand what's going on in council meeting. He posts the agenda items with, sometimes I think there's a minimal description, but it gives people the opportunity to know what's going on. So I think that's great. And I wish more councilmen would utilize their social media. So like I told you earlier, this one was an awarding a bid to Bonke Brothers. It's item 7. So I'm just going to scroll down here. Every item on the agenda has a cover page. For example, this is item 5. This is appointing boards for the mayor to serve the city. They're appointing board members to the Mayor Advisory Board for People with Disabilities and the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone. And because this is on consent agenda, there's 2 agendas in every meeting. There's what's called consent agenda and regular agenda. If it's on consent agenda, they say, okay, this is a lump of stuff that we do all the time, and these are just procedures, routine items. We want to pass these with one vote, approve them, and move on. And then regular agenda items are typically items that require a public hearing, which could be an ordinance to have a zoning change or something like that. And so they'll typically have between anywhere from 2 to 5 items on the regular agenda. And those are the items that they go through and have presentations and discussions. And so if it's on the consent agenda item, there's no presentation or discussion unless a councilman wants to pull that for himself, or you can email some of the councilmen and say, hey, listen, I'm going to be present at the meeting. I would like you to discuss this particular consent agenda item. And they sometimes might pull it for you so that you can have a better discussion over the item and understand things a little better. So we're almost to that agenda item that we were using as our example. Here it is. And what I like about the agenda, and I've started to learn this better more and more, is that they'll tell you background information that this is what they're going to be doing to the street surface project. They'll say it's going to take considerations. It's going to take 60 days. They have to have an owner's allowance of $100,000. The funding, where we're paying for it, because a lot of people don't understand that different projects come from different funding sources. This one's from the street maintenance fee. It was one of the projects that they discussed for the street projects through the Street Maintenance Advisory and Appeal Board. And the total bid is $1.4 million. And so then you can go and actually see the resolution that gives the city manager the approval where they can sign it. And then they get the contract out. And then here's the contract if you want to look at it. And then it shows you what the streets are that they're actually the project's going to work in. And you can zoom in on it if you want to. And then they show you the presentation slides. So this is what they would show in the meeting. And then they have questions. So the agenda item is, the agenda packet is very helpful to follow. One of the things I have found is that typically every item that they have on the agenda, if it's a resolution or an ordinance, you can look those up, but that's for another day. So I just wanted to let you know that is some of the things that are helpful to understand. So not all boards, in fact, most boards don't have agenda packets. So it's really hard to have information to come ready to understand what they're talking about. And so that's where it's helpful sometime to come and to be a part of the discussion. And then you can ask questions through a public comment. Now, they don't technically have to answer questions, so you can make a comment and sometimes they will respond and sometimes they don't. But what's important is if you're not available, you can come on the communications page, the live archive videos, and watch the different meetings. Now, I was trying to get information on the street maintenance, advisory and appeals board meetings, and I'd actually been paying attention for the last 2 years of these different meetings. And so I was going back to watch one of the meetings and they weren't available. And I was like, that's really weird. And so when they mentioned it, so like here is, so like 2023, you can see there, and I'm going to go through this. I'm going to try to go through this fast, so hang with me. Right here, you can just look through here and see that typically let's start at the beginning. Typically they're June and September. They're 2 meetings a year. And so here we go. There's the one in June 15th. So you can see the video and actually look at the agenda and agenda packet. And this is one of the boards that does have an agenda packet, which is very helpful. And then you kind of scroll through here and September, there's no meeting. And so it was really confusing. Couldn't find it. So I happened to be looking at something totally disconnected, but looked at the 23 meeting and look, they put it in the wrong folder. It's the Street Maintenance Advisory and Appeals Board in the City Council tab. So now I know where it is and I can find it. And it's important because there are things that are discussed. And so typically what happens in this particular board is they have a June meeting where they look through all the list of streets that they want to work on. And then in September, they approve their suggestions and pass that on to council. And then council approves what they're doing. Okay, so that was important. Let me come in here and start this video just so we can have it going. Let's see here. Sometimes there's too many different things going on. All right. So here is the last meeting. So this last meeting was, honestly, it was really exciting to me because there were several moving parts. And I had found out that the consent agenda items were all lumped together. And at one time, citizens could actually pull them out and say, hey, could you please pull out number 7? And then the council would do that. But apparently one person was causing problems, or they were doing things that the council didn't like, or the mayor or the city manager, I'm not sure who, and they decided to pull that ability from citizens because of one person, and they decided to make it to where it was all lumped together. And so in my discussions with them, I was like, how do we even discuss these items? They're like, oh, you can email, let us know, and we'll pull it for you. A citizen can request to have it pulled. And so that's what I have done. I do a lot. I really think that budget should be talked about, and those should be presented because the city does have some relationships with some different parts of the community, Chamber of Commerce, Abilene Cultural Affairs Council, the Convention Center, the Expo Center, the Abilene Visitors, the Visitors and Convention Center. Those are budgets that we do have funding from the hotel and occupancy tax. And so, again, I just think there should be more transparency in helping the citizens know how money is spent and how we can track different projects. And when you don't talk about these things, it makes it really hard to understand if you're just trying to figure some things out. Once you get into it, it's not as complicated as it seems, but it would be helpful if they would make it a little easier on the front end so that it doesn't feel so intimidating as a citizen. So one of the things I wanted to point out is that I did attend, and I've talked about this last meeting, that there was a 13-minute street advisory board meeting. And we'll see here. I'll come here. Let me pause this for a second. Right here. And I talked about this last week that, it's really hard to see these. It's not really good quality. So basically we have projects that are complete in orange, projects under construction in blue, and then pink, they're going to bid and they're in queue to get fixed. So from what I can tell, up to item 15, those are all street maintenance projects that have been assigned or picked through the advisory board, and the council approved them. So it's neat. There's pricing here. So you can see how much things cost. And one of the things I told them, I said, these are really helpful things for the citizens to understand, because when they did Fairway Oaks, which I think is item number 5, that's Fairway Oaks. I think they were, I can't read it because it's too small. They were actually about $400,000 under budget, which is really helpful to know. Hey, look, they were under budget. That's great. Because then in these 2 projects, I believe that's what it is. They're over budget. So what happened was I was like, wow, that's over budget. That's weird. That's not okay. And then I started looking, I was like, oh wait, but this was under budget. So it kind of is a wash, and they're still able to get these streets completed. And so my first thing was, first of all, 13-minute meetings aren't helpful for citizens because it's not about giving information. And second of all, we should be knowing a lot more that's going on. And the city manager told me that if I wanted to, let's see if this is it. I could go and find out this information on the website. So I thought we would go and look at it. So I found where it is. It's in communications, which that's awesome. And then you come down here and you want to look at your Abilene investment. And then there's several ones, your tax dollars, your state of the city, which is always good to watch. It's a good way to see the communications and media department really shine well, and projects and programs. Okay, then we come here. We have bond projects. I can show you that real quick. It's very basic. There's not much information. You can look, but it really doesn't tell you anything. You need to look at a resolution. That's where you're going to find that information. Oh, and it went too far back. So sorry. So I won't do that again. Okay. So we come here to communications, come down to your investment, and we're going to go to projects and programs. There's capital improvements. Again, it's not a lot of information, but here's the street maintenance fund and projects. And so the city manager was like, listen, you can go find out all this information on this page. So I was like, okay, let's come look at it. Well, since its inception, it's spent $28 million. We've collected $28 million in the street maintenance fee. $17 million in separate city funds, DCOA contributions, 2016, $125 million has been invested in the roads, which is great. I'll tell you why that's great. And with projected expenditures from the street maintenance fund at $14 million. 26% of the Abilene roads have been improved through all funding sources since 2016. So it tells you all this stuff. Okay, so you can come down here and look at the different work zones. Here's the prices. Well, here's the estimated cost. Lateral Estates is one of the these are the 2025 projects. And so here's some information that you can look at. So it looks like they have 5 projects that they're projected to work on. Okay. And so part of it is if you did not know where this was buried, you couldn't find it. But some of this information is here. I haven't looked to see what I thought there was another page that actually, it's really funny. I'm not finding the page that I was looking for, but it tells us the information so that we can track, where is it? Right here. We can see what they're doing here. But one of the things I just wish they would have done, which would have taken very little time, because it's not like they don't know this information, was just to share it with the public at the meeting. And so one of the things I have noticed is a pattern of really short meetings, not helpful to the public, not really a place for the public to engage. And I do think there is some protocols that have been established within the city, and I'm not sure why they do that. So I don't know why the city attorneys encourage the chairman to only do a public comment at the beginning rather than allowing the community to interact within. But I do know that's what happens at council meetings. And so there's a lot of consistency in this policy. And so when it was brought to the attention, the city manager didn't respond to that. But he did respond. Let me come back to this. I think that's good. He did respond to the fact that when I did email one of the directors and asked for, which I told you about this before, when I asked for a digital file, I was told that per resolution 200 and something in 2019, they were not allowed to give that information, and I had to do a public information request. So what's funny is I added up the days, and had I done it the exact day, that 10-day period would have been Thursday at the council meeting, ironically. But also, ironically, they decided to do that presentation at the city council meeting, so it was included in the packet. So it was perfect timing. I got the information I needed because it was made available, unlike the last agenda packet. And so I just said, it doesn't seem like a very, it doesn't seem like you're fostering communication with community citizens by making them have to do a public information request for any item you request. And he promptly said, listen, I can't fix problems that I don't know about, and you need to let me know if you need something. And I thought, at the time, you're under duress. It's hard to think on your feet. I'm getting better, but I'm still struggling a little bit, to be honest. And what I would have said if I had had time to think through it is like, this is not the first time this has happened. This has happened with other people. It's not a problem that's getting fixed. It's a problem that is just slowing down the process. So that's where I'm going to continue to explore and see if that really is his interest, is fixing the problem, or if he's just trying to now make me go through him so that I have only him to deal with rather than the other employees that I interact with when I'm at other meetings. I'm not really sure how that works, but I'm learning and growing. And so that's important. So I did make a comment, like I said, about the meeting and how it would be helpful. Citizens want to know. They're a little intimidated. Let's see if we can work on what is our goal. Is our goal to communicate with the community, or is it just to get through the meetings? Because most of the time I find that there is a staff recommendation at these boards. The boards agree with the staff, and then they advise the council. And so it seems to me that most decisions are made by the staff, and the boards just support what the staff wants. And so then the advisory board tells the council, and the council agrees with the board, because the board agreed with the staff. So I'm not really sure what the boards are doing at this point, because I used to think there were some places of influence you could have, but right now I'm going to say hold off. And that's why I've mainly stuck to speaking at city council meetings specifically, because I can talk to the council directly and I don't have to worry about emailing them and then emailing me back. It's just a quick and fast way to get it taken care of. So the other thing I was successful at, it was last minute because I, was trying to get through the agenda pack, and I realized I really did want to have a discussion brought out. And so a councilman was kind enough to pull a consent agenda item from, and what I wanted to discuss was just the confusion about understanding what's going on with the street maintenance fee. And so that's where we've kind of already gone through that. Then I was able to express just how it seems very confusing, and they were able to give me information. And I said, listen, I feel like this is something that's really worth communicating to the citizens, letting them know, hey, we're doing another project. We just got a bid out. This is going to be done in about 60 days. Be watching for it and to help understand the process. But The city manager was polite enough to say, we'll work on that. We'll try and improve our communication. And I'm all good with that because, again, I don't think right now I don't have the assumption that they're failing to their job because they don't want to, or they're failing at their job. I just think that a lot of times they don't know how it comes across. And the more people who can give feedback and input and say, hey, I didn't know this, could you make it more available? I think they'll work on it. Right now, I'm seeing more interest in having staff dressed like traffic cones than they are about making sure people know things that really matter, like what's on the consent agenda. Another interesting item that came up that I was not prepared for was that another councilman decided to talk about the Abilene Cultural Affairs Council budget. And so I was grateful for that because, again, I think that's something that needs to be brought to light. But what was concerning to me is, there has been a lot of discussion of what goes in the storybook sculptures. Basically, the council approves what the Visual Arts Jury Board approves. The Visual Arts Jury Board approves basically what someone either in the Nickel or the Abilene Cultural Affairs Council gives the information to approve. And so really there is no place for the citizens to say, hey, this is not a good idea, or let's change this. There's no place for the citizens to get into the process early enough so that if there needs to be a change, there can be a change. And we discovered this last year with the Kitty Corn statue. What we found was that by the time we realized what was going on, we got in there and they'd already ordered it. They'd already paid, basically. They'd approved it. Again, because the board recommends what the staff recommends and the staff recommends what whoever recommends. But there's no place for the citizens at any point to have a say. And so by the time it came to the council in October, it was already in the works and there was no way to change it. And so when Miss Lynn Barnett presented the idea that there was going to be some possible funding in the future for expanding the garden, that's when I had to stand up and say, okay, wait a minute. If we're going to expand the garden, because I thought it was full, then we've got to revamp how we allow things to be put on public property. That's the big key. It's public property. It is the property that the citizens pay for to upkeep, take care of, and it reflects on our city. And so there needs to be a better process. To my knowledge, though, they still don't have an illustrator picked out for next year's CAF, which is weird because normally they have them picked out 2 years in advance. And I'm not sure what's going on, but I'll keep you updated when we have the Visual Arts Jury Board, because that is a meeting that most people don't even know exists, because they're actually the ones who help decide what art installations go on in the city. And it's important that we, again, when it has to do with our city, we need to have some say. Now, I know the Abilene Cultural Affairs Council does a lot of different things, like not just the CAF Festival. They do young audiences. They do other things. There's other projects they're involved that they do on their own space, but most of it does take place in public property. So we just have to really have a better relationship. And right now it feels like there's not a relationship. And so that's interesting. And then the last thing I wanted to present to you really quickly, I talked a lot, but I do want you to understand how these parts go. So at the Parks and Rec Board, there was an announcement of a master plan that took place. That they designed and they were going to approve for the lake, Fort Phantom. And so I just said, like, hey, we can't take care of our parks. We're having trouble making ends meet. Why are we taking on another project? And so I brought it to the council's attention at the next council meeting, which I guess was the previous meeting. And I said, I don't know when y'all are going to talk about this, but I just want you to know, slow down, make sure we can afford this. We don't want we don't want to step into something that we can't sustain. And so the mayor was very kind and said, listen, it's just a vision. It's not going to happen necessarily anytime soon, but we need to do it. And I was like, okay, I know it's a vision, but to my knowledge, the Flatfields was a vision of the Parks and Rec Department master plan for the parks. And that became now a private-public partnership with the Abilene Youth Sports Authority. And the city has now invested $10 million into this. Now, I know there's about $4 million that's invested over the next few years. So they haven't actually paid it, but we have given some funding that we got for COVID to cover this cost. So we've invested in things, and the citizens really don't know much about it. I mean, there was nobody at that meeting where they approved an additional $5 million to pay for the Flatfields. No one was there. And the council didn't even hardly have any discussion about it, except, hey, inflation's gone up. We're going to fix this. And here we go. And they're like, okay, great. And then the next thing you know, oh my gosh, budget crisis. We can't afford to pay for the things we need to pay for. We got to cut funds, or we're going to have to raise taxes. And the cycle is kind of insane. So again, it was very kind of the mayor to try and preemptively seem to say, hey, Tammy, listen, this is not something you have to worry about. It's just a plan. The cover sheet said no fiscal impact was going to happen because of approving this a plan. And I just kindly reminded them when it was my turn to make a public comment that yes, there was fiscal impact because we'd already paid $120,000 to design this plan. And then they mentioned hiring the same company to manage the construction of the process, which is a good idea. I don't have a problem with it. We just can't afford it right now. So we just spent $1 million on a dog park. We don't have the money to take care of our own parks. We had to take out a bond, which is debt, because we can't take care of maintaining our current parks. And so we just have to start realizing we can't do it all. And there's this puzzle or this picture of city funding, private funding, and grants. And it's coming up here really quickly on the screen right now. And I was like, the city investment and the private investment were the same size, and then the grants were quite more significantly. And I know this was just a ballpark, but I was like, well, we really need to have the city investment really small, the private really bigger, and then the grants, go for grants. If they're going to allow grants, I think that's a great way to really take advantage of making our lake something more enjoyable for the community at large. That's not a bad thing, but we just have to be careful how we fund it because we're struggling. We're almost $500 million in debt. That's $500 million. And we've got to start paying attention. And they say a lot of that's the water and drought, but at the same time, I haven't even begun to uncover that, but I do know that there's a lot of decisions being made that the citizens probably aren't aware of. And so we just have to bring that to light. And I think that's good. And it didn't come to that part where I was hoping it would be. Okay. So basically, I just want you to understand that there is a place for you to have a voice. I am learning how to do it trial by fire. For the most part, they responded to me. I don't think they necessarily understood, and I'm not faulting them because I am a woman that tends to mix up words, and sometimes I don't communicate well. So I'm going to chalk it up as maybe I wasn't as effective of a communicator as I wanted, but I want you to know they are listening, they're hearing, and you can pay attention to these meetings and understand what's going on because they need your feedback. But right now, we're not getting very much feedback, although they're very happy. They're very happy with their feedback they're getting. They're very impressed with how much feedback they're getting. But the problem is it's still such a small segment of our population, and we need to make sure that happens differently. So that's what's great about this meeting. That's what's great about this process is that we are we are being governed, and we get to give our consent. And that's where it's important. And I know people are starting to pick up on the idea and starting to understand, oh, look, there's that crazy lady who makes public comments all the time, but I do know that being strategic in how you talk about things and how you present things to try and still curry favor because we want to have a relationship. We want a working relationship. And I know that that's very important, but right now we're not all on the same page. And so how does that look? How do we navigate through that? And, I don't have any other agenda except I want citizens to have a voice. That is my goal. And if we are engaging better, if we are making a better impact through that, then I'm going to be super excited. And my job will be done. Because right now I feel like I'm somewhat of a bridge between a small group of people who are starting to pay attention and the larger population. And then there's a group that are just completely happy with how things are going. And that's fine. I'm just going to say majority of the people I know have never emailed their city council member. Have never emailed a city council member. So we just got to work on that. And we're going to make sure that we take baby steps to get there so that we don't cause unnecessary grief and stress to everybody involved. But it is obtainable. We can do this. And I'm thankful that you would spend this time to learn a little bit more about how this works and moving parts. And part of it is I'm going to keep repeating myself because it takes a while for the process to stick and to make sense and the moving parts. But let's keep pressing in and seeing what we can learn. And so thank you so much for doing your part to help get the word out so that people can know what's going on through this podcast. If you will, again, I'm going to remind you to subscribe and share this with your family and friends. It's so important, and we need your help to get the word out. And I'm starting to see some uptick and people starting to go, hey, there is a path forward. Let's see what it looks like. And that's awesome. And that makes me excited. And it makes me more excited to show what's going on. And again, in as most honorable way as I know, because I try to give the elected officials and those who work for the city the best. I assume that they're operating out of their best. They want what's best for the city. And until I see further notice, I'm not going to try and burn anything down, but I'm going to press. And pressing sometimes comes across as a little contentious, and that's okay. I'm not trying to be contentious, but like the meeting last week with the Children's Advocacy Board, it was canceled. And I went up and sat for about 20 minutes waiting on the meeting. And that's okay. It happens. I'm not hypercritical, but there are things I'm noticing. There's patterns I'm noticing. There's behaviors I'm noticing that I hope we can get tweaked just a little bit. And I think it could be a game changer for so many people. So thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I hope you are a little more educated, a little more informed, and a little more empowered to realize how you can make an impact in Abilene in the Big Country. Until next time.